That was like the smartest I ever felt in my entire life was like, what did you do today? I separated pDNA. Like, I think that was like the dorkiest, smartest moment of my entire life that I had. It was pretty rad. I was pretty proud of myself. All right, I changed my settings. I think for some reason Twitch like changed my settings on me. It's bizarre. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness. No, y'all have not heard any of the things I've been blathering on about. Fabulous. Oh, but yes, I was blathering on about that yesterday. I had to basically move around my schedule because Fridays normally we have the super fun sub server on Minecraft Day. However, I made the announcement and had the fun hangout on Wednesday. And I did that because yesterday we went to Southern Illinois to my family's farm because my parents were able to get vaccination appointments there. So we went there and got vaccinated. Yes. And then spent a little bit of time with some of our family, and I got to see the family farm in the first time in forever. So that was really fabulous. We had realized that I hadn't been to the family farm in 5 years, y'all. 5 years. Like, that is a long time. Like, I felt like a terrible person. And even if you don't count the pandemic, it's not like I could have gone anywhere during the pandemic. Anyway, that's still 3.5 years that I haven't been to my family farm and seen that part of my family and stuff. So I feel like a terrible person. And I kind of have this like catch-22 goal going on right now where I'm like, I really want to make it more of a priority to see people that I care about, like my family and my friends, but it's pandemic, so I can't really do that. I can't really accomplish that goal right now. So that's kind of what I've been mulling around today while I've been super crazy busy with all of my work stuff. One of the things that was different when I visited the family farm is the layout. So the layout of it is different. They took out some of the like gravel paths and stuff like that and let them like all the grass and plants and stuff grow back, and a couple of the buildings were gone. So I was kind of sad to see that. It's just really crazy how, with the pandemic, a lot of businesses were closed. So that was really sad to see on Main Street. It's always weird in your mind when you haven't been somewhere in a long time and you haven't seen people for a long time, like your brain remembers those places and those people from the way that it looked the last time that you saw them, and just seeing how different farm looked and how different my relatives looked, I was kind of like, oh my God. Like, it was a little weird, y'all. I was like, oh my God, everybody's gotten like older and stuff. And I mean, like, duh. It's still kind of shocking. So I was just like, wow. But it was really nice to spend some time with my parents and my family and just have that whole kind of experience. And while I did work on my laptop and my phone the entire drive down, because it's like a 3 hour drive, y'all. Like, it is pretty far. It was nice to unplug for the rest of the day. It was pretty much after I did that work, I was just like, I'm just not going to check my phone. I'm not going to check my email. I am just loving this drawing, y'all. I mean, this tree is a lot. Gonna zoom out a little bit so y'all can see it. It is so pretty. Just love drawing with y'all. It's so relaxing. So I am so stoked. The next good news that's on my horizon at the moment is next week I'm going to be seeing my brother. Nightshot 333 is going to be visiting me and my parents. So for the first time in over a year, we're going to be able to see my brother and spend some time with him, and we are so excited for that, y'all. Yesterday was the most like outside and like being around people that I have done in over a year. It was actually kind of overwhelming. There were a few times where I was feeling pretty anxious. Overall, everything went fine. It was just kind of, I felt really weird being on a road trip and then being out in public around so many strangers. It was really wild because it's even different from when I go out to the store to like run an errand or something. I mean, that's also overwhelming for me too. But a whole day of, okay, we're going to be going to places, being outside and all that stuff. Like that's, I haven't done that in over a year. Like normally, like I did it where to keep myself from getting too overwhelmed, I was like, okay, today we're going to this one store and we are doing or getting like these things, and we're just going to get everything as fast as we can and get the out of the store. Like that was pretty much the most outside and human contact that I've had in the past like year and a half. So having a full day of not being in the house was pretty like, oh my god, like what is this? What is life? And it's definitely gonna take getting used to. Like I'm very, very not used to it, y'all. Like I was so exhausted by the end of the day, like not just like physically, but mentally was really where I was the most tired, where I was just like, oh my God, I am so done being a person. I am so done being around people. Like yeah, it was a lot. But it's good because I need to get used to being around people and being a human being and all of that again. If I have any hope of getting back to con life, being able to do festivals and conventions again, because that's like people times a million. Like that is a lot of peopling, and I have to kind of build myself up to getting used to that again, because in all honesty, I'm actually a pretty introverted person. Like even growing up, I was always that kid that was totally fine with being by themselves. I preferred to be by myself. Like I was totally cool with that. I was just like, I don't need people. I don't need to hang out with people or go anywhere. I can just stay here and read a book or write a story or work on my art or whatever. Like I was totally content to just be by myself. And a big part of that was because I grew up as an only child until my brother came along. And I know y'all are like, well, that's kind of how it works, but it's different because my brother and I are 7 years apart. So I was an only child for 7 years. And I've read in books and stuff that psychologically, I'm basically psychologically like an only child. So it's this kind of weird thing where it's like I grew up as an only child, but I also grew up having a sibling too. So it's kind of this weird thing where it's kind of both for me. So I have a lot of like only child traits, but I also have a lot of older sibling traits too. And on top of that, I grew up in a neighborhood where there really weren't like many kids my age. So I didn't really have a lot of people to play with. And even though like growing up, my cousins were basically like my siblings, I saw them a lot. I didn't see them every day. I didn't live with them. I didn't see them every day, even though I saw them typically like multiple times a month. It's still, it's different from friends you hang out with all the time and sibling that you live with and stuff like that. Like it's very, very different. So I basically grew up being by myself all the time. And I was just always okay with that. It never bothered me. And it was, I think, about 2015 when I realized that I really needed to step outside my comfort zone and I really needed to make more of an effort to not just tolerate, but like enjoy being around other people. And I'm not like some like weird hermit person or something where I'm like, like I never want to see other human beings or weird like that. Like I'm talking about like, I'm very much one of those people where in the past I would like go to the club and I'd be there for like an hour or two. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I want to leave. I'm not having fun anymore. This is too many people. This is too loud. This is not fun anymore. I hate this and I want to go home right now. Like that was basically my threshold for dealing with that many human beings. Like even if there were people there that I actually knew and enjoyed hanging out with, just being around that many strangers, I was basically like, I called it turning into a pumpkin for the night, where I was just like, I'm done. Bye. I started training myself to build my tolerance for being in public places and being around lots of people, friends and strangers and all that jazz. I spent a lot of time working up to that until I'd gotten to the point where in 2019 I was busy every week with conventions and drag shows and all sorts of stuff that involved being around tons of people, tons of strangers, and not just being around them, but also like actually interacting with them and like talking to them and making small talk and like all that kind of stuff. Like I had gotten really, really good at that. And that's the thing, is that it's like I'm actually not naturally good at that, y'all. Like I actually had to like learn how to do that, and I actually had to like build my tolerance for being able to like deal with those kind of situations. And the pandemic like really severely ate away at a lot of that progress that I had made. And I kind of realized that yesterday. I was like, oh my God, I cannot people. And that's the thing I'm going to have to work on this year and next year, is really building that back up so that I can get back to feeling totally comfortable at conventions, being around lots of people and other types of events and stuff that I like to do. And the reason why I'm sharing this with y'all is that I know there's a lot of introverted people out there like me who struggle with all that kind of stuff, struggle with being around lots of strangers, struggle with making small talk and like putting yourself out there and stuff. Like it is hard. Like I'm not going to y'all, it is hard. And there are times where you turn into a pumpkin and you're like, I'm done, I'm out of here, goodbye. And it's just something you have to work at. And sometimes you have to be a little mean to yourself and force yourself to stay at the party longer than you would normally want to, and tough it out and just kind of build your tolerance. That's how I got to that point, and I'm gonna have to do it again. It's not gonna be fun, it's not gonna be pretty, but that's just part of it. And I'm going to do a quick zoom out. I'm sure you're wondering, like, what on earth am I doing? So right now we are working on this gorgeous fantasy forest scene. We are trying to finish coloring the tree. It's a lot of tree. And we have these awesome mythical creatures, and it's just going to be a really pretty scene, y'all. Basically, I was going through one of my old sketches, and I had this project in high school where we had to each week draw some things for different letters of the alphabet. So like each week we had to do, I think it was like 5 letters of the alphabet, and I decided to have them all be in a theme, which wasn't required, but I'm that extra, y'all, so I made a theme. And I made it mythological creatures. And so each week we had to do 5 letters, go through the whole alphabet. I had all these different creatures that I had drawn back in the day, and when I came across that, I was like, oh, I remember these. These were so fun. These were so cute. So I ended up taking some of those creatures that I had drawn, and I kind of was like, oh, I really like these. And I realized that a bunch of them really go well together in like a forest setting. So that is how we came up with this drawing, is I just kind of pulled together some of the different things that I had drawn in the past and redrew them and put them all together in this little forest scene. So that is what we are drawing, y'all. It's not for anything. It's not for a project. But we're doing good, y'all. Look at this. It's looking excellent. It's looking beautiful. I love it. I hope y'all love it. We're almost done with this tree. Oh my God. In honor of that, I just visited my family's farm yesterday. I think it only appropriate that I tell a story about the farm. So here's a new one that I haven't told y'all yet. So when I was a little kid, we're talking about like 4 or 5 years old. And these memories are also super vague, y'all. Like I was really little. I don't remember like a ton of stuff. But what I do remember is my family, we used to go to the family farm to celebrate the 4th of July. I'm not really sure why we stopped that tradition. We started then going and celebrating the 4th of July with my dad's side of the family instead. I'm not really sure what caused that to happen, but that's why we like, I don't really have any memories past when I was a little kid, because we like changed up what we were doing. But back when we did, just to give y'all, kind of set the scene. The way that my family's farm used to be laid out, my great-grandparents were actually alive until I was a junior in high school. So they lived to be like over 90 years old. They were really, really super old. So the farmhouse actually was my great-grandparents' house. And it was this super like, it just old building. And how I remember it, like this might not be 100% accurate, but how I remember it was this cute little like 1-story house, and like it technically had like a 2nd story, but that was actually like the attic where they like stored stuff. You didn't like go up there, like nobody lived up there. And it was this cute little like white farmhouse, and it had a red porch around the front of it, and it had like all those little like old fashioned like old lady garden ornaments. So those little plasticky animal things that had the little propellers on them, so like it looked like a bird was flying or like a turtle was running or stuff like that. Like they had a few of those out front, and they had some like little like hedges and flowers and all that kind of fun stuff. And then there was this little like dirt area, and on there was this like huge metal seesaw, and it wasn't attached to the ground, so it was like a round bottom, and it was super dangerous and super awesome. I remember playing on it. It was so much freaking fun. Probably super dangerous, but thank God we never got hurt. And then there was the big barn shed where like all of the like tractors and dangerous equipment was kept. And that was actually one of the few rules that I actually did follow growing up, was I never went in that barn. Like I knew that I was not supposed to go in that barn because it was full of very dangerous, sharp, big metal objects that were absolutely so full of tetanus. I actually never went in there growing up. I think I just was not interested in big boring machinery. And then next to that was the main horse paddock with the horse barn. Connecting all of that together was this really big like gravel path, like almost kind of like a driveway, but it was really more of a path connecting all of these buildings together. And then there was this huge grassy lawn. And so the whole family would park their cars on like the pathway, and then whatever space wasn't available on the pathway, they would park on the grassy lawn. And most of my relatives on the farm had pickup trucks because, I mean, obvious farm pickup trucks, all that. So the little kids, we were supposed to sit on the flatbed of the trucks. We weren't supposed to be running around out in the grass or on the path and stuff while they were lighting the fireworks, because that's dangerous. So we were supposed to sit on the truck beds to watch. And I remember before the fireworks would start, right when it was starting to get dark, we had like little like jam jars. We would fill them with grass, and then we would run around and we would catch fireflies or lightning bugs, whichever it is you like to call them. But we would catch them, and so we'd be sitting on the truck beds with our little jam jars full of lightning bugs for our little lanterns, and they would light off the fireworks in the road so that they were far enough away. And I know what y'all are thinking, like, oh my God, are you crazy? Why are you lighting off fireworks in the middle of a road? You have to remember, this is out in the middle of the country. Nobody is driving by. And even if it's like a car, like you can see it from miles and miles away, and you can just get the out of the road while the car passes. It's the middle of the country. The chances of a car coming down the road are just not going to happen, because it's like everybody who would be coming down the road is already there. It's sort of the thing. Like everybody, that was the other cool thing, was that like everybody lived so close together. Like everybody kind of lived together, like on the farm. There were so many different houses like all down the road. Like they were all my relatives, so I could just run around, run amok, and I didn't have to worry about like stranger danger and stuff, because it was like literally everybody who was around was related to me. That was really cool. And I just remember watching the fireworks be lit off, and we had some of the like, we did have a few of the like big firework, the fun ones that go off with like the big boom, like the big ball, like those are really fun. And we had like the Roman candles and all that cute stuff. And a lot of the guys, so like my dad and my uncles and like the men in the family, they really liked setting off bottle rockets. They had a lot of fun doing that. They would be drinking beer. And then, so like, you know, during the day, all the men were busy drinking beer and having a good time. And they would save all the bottles so that then they could do bottle rockets while we were like lighting off fireworks and stuff. And then there would be like a period in between where they would let the kids light sparklers and run around with sparklers. And they would let us do those little snakes where it's like the little gray puck and you put a lighter next to it and it turns into like a curly Q snake. We weren't allowed to light it. Obviously, an adult lit it for us, but we got to tell them, already set, go. We got to tell them when to light it, and our faces would be like this close to it. Super not safe. But yeah, it was so much fun, and it was like a lot of people. Like I would say it was anywhere from like about 10 to like 15 people, if not more. Again, this is 5-year-old me memory, so pretty hazy, not necessarily totally accurate. But that's kind of what I remember. And just running around with my cousins, doing sparklers and all that stuff. It was such a fun time. And one of the really cool fireworks that they would light off, they would always only do one, but it was this one where you set it off and there's a little army dude in it and he has a parachute. And so, like, the firework goes up and goes like pew, poo, and explodes. And this little army man with a little parachute then comes out of the firework and then comes down to the ground. And once it was the adults gave us the all clear, like, okay, the firework went off, it's safe, they would let us go grab the army man, chase where it fell and find it and come back with him and be like, I found the army man. There was one year where he ended up in a tree and we were very sad. We're like, oh no, we can't get him. He's up in the tree. And none of the adults would let us go climb up the tree to go get him, of course, and we were all very upset about it. But that was always like a special treat, like go chase after the little parachute army man fireworks. That was always so much fun, y'all. And it was especially nice because since it was in the middle of the country, there were like no lights. So there was only like one light, the main barn light, which is like always on for safety, but that was like it. And so you could like see all the stars and it was really dark. So the fireworks looked really good and really bright. And it was just so cool. And I'm so lucky that I got to have that be a part of my childhood. This really fun experience with lighting fireworks with my family and having a good old fashioned 4th of July sort of thing. And I do remember doing 4th of July after that with my dad's side of the family, but that we couldn't get fireworks because that's in the suburbs and there's also no safe space to like set off fireworks in the middle of the suburbs. We had sparklers and fun little firecrackers and like small stuff like that, but it was really more about like the family getting together and having a big barbecue and eating together and like hanging out together. We didn't have like all of that stuff with like the fireworks and the lightning bugs and all that stuff. Like we didn't do all of that stuff. So it was a very different experience. It was still very fun, but it was a very different experience. All right, y'all, we have colored the tree. Look at it. Fabulous. There's like a few details around the bottom that still need to be filled in, but we'll get to that. So let's color in this cute little lamb. So this lamb is going to be white. So let's make our background some sky and some grass so that it's easier for us to color this in. Let's get started on that. Then we'll get our sky going. A little bit dimmer because it's a forest. There we go. Yeah, that's good. Forests are kind of a little bit more low light. And this also helps me to see like what parts I've colored and what parts I haven't colored yet too. This is a trick that I sometimes do with my illustrations where I'll have like a background color that I'll just fill the entire background with and then I'll color over it just so that I can figure out, okay, where am I? What have I colored? What's going on here? What parts did I miss? That sort of thing. So here is our cute little lammy. Do some line art up in here. And with this, we can do some harsh lines. So that is going to make it easier. We don't have to hand color everything. When I was a kid and I had my adventures on the farm, there were also times where my parents would be there too. So the whole visit wasn't necessarily just me on the farm and that was it. There would also be a period of time where my parents would also be there and visiting with the family. And so during that, on one of those visits, my mom and my aunt decided to go for a walk. And they told me and my cousin that we could not come with because they were going to go for a walk on one of the paths that led through the horse pasture. And they were afraid because we were pretty young, so we're pretty small, and they were afraid that we would possibly get trampled by the horses, so we were not allowed to come. And so we decided to occupy ourselves doing something else to play, and then we got bored and we wanted to join them on the walk that we were not supposed to be on. And so my cousin knew the path. She knew where it was and she led the way, and we're like, oh, we'll just meet up with them and it'll be fine. Of course, it was not fine, y'all, because y'all know by now my life is chaos. And if something can go wrong, it will, and it will go wrong spectacularly because that is my life. We're by ourselves wandering on this path, and we finally catch up with my mom and my aunt. But the thing is right when we catch up with them, I don't specifically remember what exactly happened that led to this, but of course, exactly the thing that they were scared of happened, where it was right when we caught up with them that for some reason something spooked the horses. And I mean, honestly, it is not hard to spook horses. Just about anything, real or imaginary, can spook horses. So it's not like we like did something outrageous and it like scared the horses. Like all you have to do is like sneeze wrong and they'll get scared. And the horses got spooked and they basically like stampeded. And they like stampeded right at us. It was very scary. And I don't remember a whole lot because it was a whole lot happening very quickly, like in a matter of seconds and stuff. But basically, my mom and my aunt freaked out and got us all to safety. And I just remember the horses, they were just like hauling. They were just all kinds of freaked out. And of course, you got in huge trouble because we did the thing we were not supposed to do. And of course, the reason why we were not supposed to do it happens. So that really didn't help. But yeah, I think that was actually the only time in my entire life that I remember being on that part of that path and being in that part of the farm. I don't think I ever got to go back to that area of the farm ever again. Honestly, I don't blame my parents for not letting me ever go back to that part of the farm. It was pretty crazy, y'all. I mean, like horses are wonderful, majestic, beautiful creatures and I love them, and I actually took riding lessons growing up and I learned how to like ride horses and handle them and all that stuff. But I mean, they can also be really, really dangerous. Even if you do know what you're doing, they can still be really, really dangerous. So I was a little bit crazy, but thankfully everybody was fine. Just very, very scared and very, very in trouble. Oh, but we were always doing stuff we were not supposed to do when we were on the farm. That was pretty much a given, was doing stuff we were not supposed to do. That was one of the big ones of doing a thing we were not supposed to do where it was actually like not safe. A lot of the other stuff was just don't be annoying kids, don't break stuff, don't get into stuff you're not supposed to get into, and of course, all of those things happened. There was another time when we went into the farmhouse and we were not supposed to be in the farmhouse. So the majority of the days that I spent on the farm by myself when it was like just me and my cousins playing, a big part of it was that there were designated houses that like you are allowed to be in this house around this time of day, or if this person is home or whatever, and if they're not, you're not allowed to be there. And then there were designated houses where like you could just go in to that house whenever you felt like it. There was kind of a schedule based on like what adults were home and whose house had like breakable stuff that they didn't want little kids running around and messing everything up and all that kind of stuff. And the farmhouse, because my great grandmother owned a lot of fancy breakable stuff. So, of course, she did not want us in her house, potentially breaking her fancy breakable fancy stuff, which of course made it all the more enticing to want to be in the farmhouse, even though, to be quite honest, the farmhouse was really not that interesting to be in as a little kid. Like, it's not like they had a lot of like fun things to do in there or like a lot of fun things to play with. It was kind of a very boring adult house, but because we weren't supposed to be in there, that's what made it exciting. And then the other part of it was that my great grandmother hid all of this candy in the house, and we were not allowed to eat her candy because it was her candy, and we did it anyway. And the funny thing is that we like totally did it because we weren't supposed to do it. Because in all honesty, the candy tasted horrible, y'all. Like, it tasted awful. And a big part of that was because the candy was really old. Like, I have no idea how old this candy was, but I'm pretty sure it was like old, like ancient, and like we probably shouldn't have eaten it. But we wanted to eat it because we weren't supposed to. You know how that is. Doing stuff you're not supposed to do makes it more enticing. The different hiding places that she had, two that we knew about anyway, were she hid them in these big, like old-fashioned jars under her bed, and then she also hid bags of candy in her freezer. And I know what y'all are thinking. Y'all were little kids. How did you get up in the freezer? She had one of those fridges where the freezer was on the bottom and the fridge was on the top. So it was kind of like an upside down refrigerator. So it was actually really, really easy for us to get into the freezer because it was at like our height. It was actually a lot harder for us to get into the fridge than into the freezer. Also, the freezer door, I mean, the fridge door was also really, really heavy. So it was really hard for us to be able to open. But yeah, that's where she like hid her candy. So every once in a while, we would like go in there and we'd eat some of it. And she always knew. She always knew, y'all. And she would get so mad at us. We never actually like got punished. Like we never, like nothing actually ever happened beyond being yelled at and told to like go back outside and go away, basically. Honestly, was kind of enough. As a child, I really hated being yelled at, so that was kind of honestly enough of a punishment for me to it be a long period of time before I tried to do something again that I wasn't really supposed to do. There really wasn't a whole lot of time out, and there really wasn't a whole lot of like being spanked or like anything like that either. It was just kind of like, get the hell out, go play somewhere else, being hooligans type of thing. But the one time where we really, really did actually get in trouble was I don't know what possessed us to do this, but we were playing tag and it was just the three of us, me and my two cousins. I had way more cousins than just two. I had a lot of cousins. It was just there were two main cousins that I played with all the time. And then there were three more cousins that like we sometimes played with, but not all the time. And the two cousins that like we played with all the time, there was one day, I don't know what possessed us to do this, but we played tag where we were playing tag through all the houses. So we were like running in and out of the houses and all around outside to play tag and not just outside playing tag, which obviously something bad is going to happen doing that when we're literally hauling running around inside these houses, running through them basically, run into the front door, run out the back door, run out the side door, whatever, like that kind of shenanigans, you know something bad is gonna happen. And I don't know how we did it. I don't remember what exactly happened to make this happen. In doing that, in running around like idiots, when made another, because we made multiple passes through all the buildings, when we made one of our passes through the farmhouse, one of us accidentally knocked over this glass thing. I don't really remember what it was. It was like, you know, those old fashioned like glass decorative things that were really popular. And I think it was the 50s. It was either the 40s or the 50s when those things were popular. Back when they had like all those decorative glass things in people's houses. There were like the candy dishes. I don't remember specifically which one of those fancy glass things that it was, but it was one of those things. And we broke it. We somehow broke one of those things. Oh my god, y'all. In so much trouble. That was the most trouble I've ever been in my entire life, being on the farm. Oh my god. Oh, my great-grandmother was not happy. She was so pissed at us, y'all. I don't even remember what the punishment was. It was so bad. But yeah, we never did that ever again. It was so bad, y'all. Oh, I like how this sheep is turning out, y'all. Like, cause the sky and the grass are like behind it. We're coloring over it right now, and with the white, it looks like it's made of clouds. I'm actually really liking this concept, y'all. What do y'all think? I'm really liking this concept. I think I kind of want to do something with this. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I think I want to do something with this. This looks really cute. All right, we got to color in this plant, and I'm just now realizing that I have not added this to the color palette, which is important. So this is the plant part. So this particular mythological creature, I think it's called a lamb tree, y'all. Now that I remember, I think that's what it's called. I think it's called a lamb tree. The idea is that it's you plant this magic seed and it grows into this plant, and then the plant, like, instead of a flower, it's a lamb. And the lamb cannot be disconnected from the plant. Like if it's disconnected from the plant, it'll die because it is the plant. And basically, like, their life is they just kind of like live in the little radius of the stalk of the plant and just eat whatever is around the plant, and then they kind of die. It's a little sad, a little morbid, but I think it looks really cute. I like the idea of a little like lamb tree plant thing. I think it's just really adorable, so that's why I decided to draw it. It's a European folklore thing. I can't remember if it's specific to England or Ireland. I'd have to look it up again. I haven't looked it up in years and years and years, so I don't remember what the mythology is behind it, rhyme or the reason why they came up with this really absurd thing. But I think it's really cute. I enjoy it very much. And what's funny is that I got to do this sort of project again when I was in college. I had this class called fantasy fiction writing, which I took. And that is how I met my mentor, Tina Jens, who was my college professor and is now my mentor as an author. And I actually have her to thank for getting my first novel published. And that's a whole other story. But I took her class, and one of the projects that was ongoing through the year was every week, part of our homework was that we had to do like a little report, like kind of like a little essay about a mythological creature. So each week we had to pick a mythological creature that we wanted to research and like write kind of a little report about. And then we had a class-wide kind of like database sort of thing where everybody would upload their little essay. And the idea was so that we had a resource available so that when we would have our writing assignments, so like writing stories and stuff, if you wanted to try writing about a new mythological creature that you didn't know a lot about, you could go to like the database and you could pick something. And all of the research was there so that you could just know all about whatever that creature is and be able to write a story about it. So that was a really fun project for me, and I frequently would turn in more than one mythological creature each week, which my teacher and my classmates really appreciated and really enjoyed. So yeah, I kind of got to do the same little project again, both in high school and in college, with this whole theme of doing like a series of mythological creatures and learning about them and stuff. So that's something that I've just always been interested in, which is a big part of the reason why I love writing fantasy stories, is I just find like all of the like history behind different mythological creatures to be really fascinating. Ooh, you know what? I think I want to make this a little bit darker just because this is the same color as the grass, and that's gonna like kind of blend together with that. That'll be awkward. So let's go another step down with that. There we go. Perfect. Because we're going to have to get darker for shading this anyway. Honestly, I should probably just have the grass be a different shade of green at this point. I should probably do that. Growing up, I've always thought that sheep are really, really cute. And like in movies, they always depict them, like in cartoons and movies and stuff, they always depict sheep as being these like really cute, fluffy, adorable little like cotton ball creatures. And so I remember as a kid really, really wanting to see a sheep in real life someday and hug a sheep, because I imagined that it would basically be like hugging a giant cotton ball. That is what I had been led to believe. And I can't remember if it was in junior high or high school. It was one of the two. But we had a field trip where we went to a farm and I saw real sheep for the first time in my life, y'all. Because my family's farm, when I was a little kid growing up, we only had horses. And then when I got older, when I was an adult, they got goats and chickens. But I don't think they ever had sheep ever at any point on the farm. But even so, like even on our farm, we didn't have sheep. So I had never seen a sheep before. I remember seeing the sheep for the first time and I was so upset. Like I felt so betrayed and lied to. These sheep were so freaking hideous. They were so gross, y'all. Oh my God. I had no idea that sheep were gross. So they are only like these cute little fluffy cotton balls in live action movies, like not cartoons, but like live action movies. The only reason why they look so lovely and fluffy and all that is because they wash them so that they're all like pleasant to like touch and have on screen and deal with and all that stuff. Whereas like actual like sheep that are like just hanging out IRL on a farm are really gross. They're really dirty. They're really greasy. And they smell really bad. And I was so sad because I was like, oh my God, my dream of hugging a sheep is just absolutely dead. I was so sad. I was like, oh my God, I do not want to hug this nasty thing, this smelly, greasy, dirty thing. And also, they are not fluffy, y'all. Like, sheep wool is actually not fluffy. Like, it is very, very dense when it is actually like on their body. Like, it only becomes like fluffy once they like shear it off the sheep and then they like wash it and stuff. But when it's actually on their body, it's like really, really dense. And yeah, it was a very disappointing, sad experience. And I was just, because like the whole trip there, I had found out that there were sheep on the farm and I was like, holy I'm gonna hug a sheep. I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I'm finally gonna get to hug a sheep. And then we get there and I'm like, what is this? These are not sheep. What are these? Oh, it was so disappointing. It was so sad. But even so, like, even now that I know that they're smelly and gross and greasy and all that, I still like, I love sheep in the respect of like artwork. Like, I like drawing them. I think they're really cute. I like their aesthetic. I'm also an Aries. I'm a ram, so it's also part of my aesthetic, sheepiness. But yeah, that's also why I like kidnapping all the sheep on Minecraft. Is I'm like, I have all the fluffy sheepies. They are all mine. And because it's Minecraft, they're not gross. So I can hug all the sheep in Minecraft and they are all mine. So now y'all know why I'm like so obsessed with sheep in Minecraft, is I just think they're really, really cute. I used to draw sheep a lot when I was a little kid too, like little, like, you know, little kid doodles and stuff. I would draw, you know, fluffy cotton ball sheep a lot. Drew a lot of sheep and a lot of horses. The bulk of what I drew when I was a little kid. Like in terms of just like drawing things. Like I also drew like a lot of cartoon characters, like especially Pokemon and Sailor Moon, but like non-known character type of things. Like I drew a lot of scenes with horses and sheep. And I don't really have a larger reason besides I just liked them. Like that was a lot of the stuff with me as a little kid, was I didn't really have like a greater reason for doing any of the stuff that I did as a little kid. It was mostly just I just liked it. That was about it. Didn't really have a whole lot of deep thought process going on behind stuff that I did and stuff that I liked. And even now, like, even though I do have some deeper meaning in some of the artwork and some of the stories and stuff like that that I create, like at the end of the day, the main part of why I draw the things I draw and write the things I write is because I like it. Really, the biggest reason why any of the things are. I don't really... Most of the things that I create, I don't initially set out with a grand message or thought. It's just kind of, you know what would be cool? You know what would be fun? It's kind of just my MO. Ooh, I have a story for y'all. Okay. So when I was in high school, I mean, like, not just high school, my whole life, I have been a major dork. Growing up, I always loved reading books. And not just like storybooks, I also really enjoyed reading, like, I'm talking like straight up encyclopedias and textbooks and just like very information dense books. Like I really, really enjoyed like learning. Basically, I was just like a sponge as a kid. And my family, we call it facts of the day, where I admit I do go a little Sheldon Cooper and I can get a little annoying, where I'll just start like info dumping random facts about things, and it can be exhausting. And I appreciate my family for putting up with my nerdiness. So just to give you all a little background on like the level of nerd we're talking here. I'm not sure how many of y'all know, but a couple months ago, I wrote an RPG supplement guide called 100 Dangerous Plants, and it is available for sale, where y'all can go and check it out and include it in your next D&D or Pathfinder or, you know, whatever tabletop game it is that you play. And it is where I straight up wrote 100 different kinds of dangerous plants that you can include in your campaign, so that it's not just like monsters that your party has to deal with, but also like the environment, like plants. And how I came up with this, because I've also recently had another supplement guide come out called 100 Witches, and I'm currently working on another guide. But for the plants one, how I came up with that, most of y'all are probably thinking, like, how did I sit there and come up with 100 plants for that sort of thing? And the answer to that is that I have always been a huge dorkosaurus about botany. Like I am totally like, the sad thing is I'm actually very, very allergic to plants, which is one of the main reasons why I never went into botany. But I had a garden growing up. There was like a little space around my parents' house where they let me like choose different plants that I wanted to plant there. And I was allowed to, within reason, kind of do whatever I wanted with them, all that sort of stuff. So that was like my little space. And in high school, I ended up taking advanced biology for my science credit my junior year. At my high school, we only needed 3 science credits to graduate. So freshman year, you were supposed to take biology, and sophomore year, you're supposed to take chemistry, and then junior year, you could take whatever you wanted. And they had a few different science classes. They had physics, advanced chemistry, advanced biology, and earth science, which was basically like geology. I don't remember if they had other science classes available other than those, but those were the main ones that they had that I remember. And I picked, of course, advanced biology. And one of the perks of being in the advanced biology class was that near the end of the year, you got to go on this field trip to a place called Tree Haven. And it was actually this college, and I can't remember exactly where it was. It was somewhere here in the Midwest. It was a very long bus ride. I remember that. But it was actually a college that I think like their specialty is biological sciences and stuff, because it's literally in the middle of like a nature preserve, like a huge forest and like all this nature stuff. That was like a big draw, and that's why we got to go on that field trip. And while we were there, like, it was a fun field trip, but we also had to do a lot of homework while we were there. And it wasn't like papers and stuff. It was actually like we had scheduled times where we had to go out as a class to these different areas, and we actually had to do verbal exams where the teacher had like a little clipboard, and like she would be walking through and she would like point at different plants and like ask us different questions, and then we got points based on whether they were like right or wrong and stuff. And we also had to like take notes, so we had like our little clipboards and like notepads and stuff while we were doing this walking through the field, because when we got back to school we were going to have to actually take a lot of like written tests once we got back to school about the stuff that we learned while we were out there, and we had to like write essays about it. Like not like essays, but like scientific paper like style essays and stuff. So it was like a whole thing. Like it was a really fun field trip, and it was actually an overnight field trip. We stayed there for like the whole weekend. So it was a really big deal, but it was also really, really hard. Like it was well known that that was a really, really hard class. And if you weren't a giant, like total nerd alert, that you were going to do really bad in the class. Like, you know, if you weren't a giant nerd, you were totally going to fail that class. And so, like, as enticing as the field trip was, if you're not good at biology, you probably should not go. So yeah, it was such a fun weekend being there, and I did not want to leave. And a bunch of my classmates felt the same way too, because it was giant nerd alert class. And so that was like the first time that I really got to kind of apply all of my random facts of the day, skills and knowledge in like a real setting where like I had to like actually identify plants like out in the wild, like out in real life, and like know all these different facts about them and stuff. And I actually did pretty well. Like I was really proud of myself. I actually did really, really well. And so I got to kind of relive that a little bit with my nerdiness about plants. And when I wrote the guide of the 100 dangerous plants, like I actually drew upon like real like botany information in order to create this guide. Like I actually applied the rules of like creating an ecosystem and like based the different like characteristics of the plants in the guide based on like the behaviors of like how plants behave like in real life and stuff like that. So it was really, really fun using all of that knowledge and those skills to put that guide together. And unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of opportunities to do something like that in my adult life. I'm pretty sure I've lost a lot of that information since I went to Tree Haven, all that very specific knowledge that I knew about different plants. I'm pretty sure it's just woo out of my head by now. But the cool thing is that we have like smartphones now. So when I was in high school, that was actually before smartphones were a thing. Like back when I was in high school, that's literally like back when texting was really becoming like a bigger thing. So you didn't have like a smartphone that we could just like Google something really quick being out and about like that. And so it was really important back then for us to like really memorize that information and stuff because we didn't have all that information like just at our fingertips. Whereas now it's not as important for me to like remember all that stuff because I can look at a plant out in the wild and I can just like Google different stuff about it from my smartphone and ta-da, like now I have all the information that I need about a specific plant. I don't have to memorize all that anymore. But I actually did a lot of research when I created that RPG guide. Like I was on Google a lot looking up different stuff about plants in order to make that guide as realistic as possible. And I had the funnest, dorkiest time ever doing that project. And I'm hopeful that I'll get to do more stuff like that again in the future. But I am absolutely getting my dork vibes on making this little lamb tree. I am enjoying it immensely. What do y'all think? What do y'all think of this like kind of like see-through cloud effect we have going on with our sheepy here? I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. I don't know if it feels like it's just unfinished or if it actually looks cute. So let's start on our satyr. He is the last thing we need to color in. All of our color blocking will be done, and that is a huge part of this process, so that will be exciting. Yeah, my advanced biology class was like really, really advanced, at least for like high school. There was one in-class lab that we did where we literally got to, like I can't remember exactly how we did it. I'm sure I could look it up to see how you do the experiment. It's actually really easy to do if you have the right like materials and stuff. But it's you basically have a blender and you have some like sciencey chemicals and you have peas and you do this process where you can actually separate the DNA of the peas and you can actually like stick like a stick into the blender and you can actually pull out the strands of pea DNA. And obviously like a single like actual strand of DNA is you can't see it to like the naked eye. So it's literally like all these tons and tons of like clumps of the DNA. But it's really, really cute. Like it looks like the like thinnest, teeniest spaghetti you've ever seen in your life is basically what it looks like. But it was really, really cool. That was like the smartest I ever felt in my entire life was like, what did you do today? I separated pDNA. Like I think that was like the dorkiest, smartest moment of my entire life that I had. It was pretty rad. I was pretty proud of myself. And I think part of why I became so paranoid and obsessive, and ultimately I think what really saved our lives with the pandemic was in this same class, we actually studied the Ebola outbreak that happened. So this is a real thing that actually happens, and then a book was written about it. It's called Hot Zone. I do not recommend reading it. It will make you extremely squicky and paranoid and freaked out. Like, it is not a book for the faint of heart. Like, even if you're like, I'm a hardcore horror person, like, especially with that we're living in a pandemic right now, like, don't read that book. It will absolutely freak you out. It really will. I mean, like, this is back in high school. Like, I never imagined I would go through a real life pandemic, and this book freaked me out for months after I read it. But it's a very graphic description of what happened in the Pentagon, actually, where, because in the Pentagon, they actually experiment with like the most dangerous diseases known to man, both for chemical warfare as well as for developing vaccines and stuff. So that's why in the news you've heard them talking about, like, back when they were developing the vaccine and stuff, like, that's because they've been doing this kind of research for like decades. Coming up with vaccines is a very important part of the government. Their job in the government and stuff is, to help keep us safe, and researching vaccines and cures for really dangerous diseases and stuff keep us all safe, basically. So that's always been a thing. And it was about these scientists who were studying the Ebola virus. For those of y'all that don't know what Ebola is, do not Google it. For the love of God, do not Google it if you don't want nightmares forever. Basically, it is one of the most infectious diseases on the planet. It is scary. Don't worry. The chances of you getting it are like zero, basically. Unless you go out into the wilds of Africa and literally like go lick a monkey, like you're not going to get it. It is a very, very specific virus, but it is a very scary virus because basically what it does is, it's crazy because the virus is very dangerous, but it's not considered a successful virus. And what that means is a successful virus is able to infect its host, but the goal is so that then they utilize that host, aka you, to then infect more hosts, aka you getting other people sick with the same sickness. That's how viruses breed and grow and spread and stuff. And with Ebola, it's not considered a successful virus because frequently it kills the host before it can infect anybody else, which I mean is good news because it's a very scary virus, but it's also very scary because chances of living, like the mortality rate for Ebola is 90%. Like 90% chance you're gonna die, basically. Like that's, I forget what the percentage is for COVID, but like COVID is nothing compared to Ebola, basically. Like most viruses are nothing compared to Ebola. Ebola is 90%, like you are going to die. 10% of people live. And basically what it does is it just liquefies your insides. Is what it does. That's why I'm like, please don't Google it because it's really, really horrible. It's horrific. And the book was about that. And it was about this outbreak that happens in the lab where they were studying Ebola, and a few people got sick and they died. And this was a real thing that happens, like in real life. And it was very, very scary. And I just remember reading that and being like, oh my God, germs are so scary. And so when I first heard about the coronavirus in Wuhan and all that stuff, when I started seeing the news reports come in, I freaked the hell out, y'all. Like, I lost my I was like, it is go time. And everybody thought I was overreacting, and I'm like, who's overreacting now? I wish I was overreacting, y'all. I really wish I was. Nerdiness saved the day. My intense fact of the day knowledge of that, I'm pretty sure, is what helped keep me and Jerfay alive during the beginning of the pandemic, really and truly. It's Sally, chopping down so many trees for fences. I will never forget when Ebola was around a few years ago and I was in middle school and everybody was saying Ebola, like Ricola. Oh my God, I remember that. Oh my God, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. I remember people doing that. Also, when people were saying people were coming back to life from Ebola and they thought the zombie apocalypse was starting. Oh my God, I remember that too. I remember that. There was like some dude in Florida that like bit people and they thought that it was the zombie apocalypse, and then like the Ebola thing. And oh my God, yeah. I remember that. Oh my God. Reality is so weird, y'all. Reality is so weird. That's why I tell people, tell my stories and stuff, because I've got some pretty wild stories. Like, I'm like, you can't make this up. Real life is way weirder than anything you can make up. Really and truly. Real life is just so weird, especially because like when you write a story, like there are rules. Like the story has to make sense. The plot has to make sense. Real life doesn't have to make sense. Random it just happens because that's how life is. Random crazy just happens for literally no reason. That's what makes life so weird, y'all. But I do remember that. I remember that. People running around going, Ebola. Like the Ricola commercial. Oh, that was so funny. I remember that. I freaked out about that too. I remember tracking like all the different countries where the Ebola virus was. I was waiting for it. I was like, oh, if Ebola comes here. I was like, I didn't know what I thought I was gonna do, but I was gonna do something, y'all. I was like, no to this. All of that to the no. Oh, y'all, I was just, oh, I was tracking COVID like when it was first a thing. I was so freaked out, y'all. Big oof to that. That is unfortunately our reality right now. As awful as COVID is, and trust me, like, COVID is absolutely to be taken seriously. I'd rather have this than Ebola. Like, oh my God, Ebola would, no, I don't even want to think about it. We're not even going to think about it. We're going to, I know, change the subject. Miss Sally, I did too. My school self was like, I'm going to die. And my mom was like, bro, chill. Oh, I love that. Oh, yes. It's like, that's okay. I can freak out for the both of us. I've got enough freak out to go around. Yeah, I was always also that kid who always took everything like 100%, like 110% super, super serial, y'all. I was always that kid. Everything was always very, very serious. Like, even as a kid, like, I was never the goofy kid. Like, the goofy kid is my brother. He is absolutely the goofy kid. I have always been the serious kid. Everything is very, very serious. Like, I did plenty of like goofing off and yippee skippying, but I don't know. I'm a very serious person. Back when I was in high school, because our school was so big, it's even bigger now. I actually drove past it recently and saw that they had expanded it by like a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine how chaotic that school must be now. But when I was going to school, our high school had 5,000 kids. There were like 1,000 kids in my graduating class. So there were a lot of kids. And because of that, they did not have enough space for everybody to have a full hour of lunch. And so to combat this, what they did was they made having a full hour of lunch a senior privilege that you had to earn, where the only way that once you were a senior that you could have a full hour of lunch is if you had gone through all of high school without getting a detention, which is lame and stupid, but that's what the rules were. Especially because our high school, like, I'm pretty sure schools still act like this, but from what I've told people, like, my high school was extra terrible about it. Our high school basically acted like a prison. Like, it literally treated us like we were like convicts, basically. We did not have a lot of rights, and they were just like handing out detentions and suspensions like it was candy. You just sneeze wrong in detention. But somehow, me and my best friend in high school managed to get a full hour of lunch our senior year. We worked very hard to make sure we didn't get detention. It was very difficult. But before you made it to your senior year, you had to have it where you had half of the hour was lunch, and it's not even an hour, it's only 50 minutes. So 20 minutes you get to eat lunch, basically. And then the other 20 minutes, because there's a passing periods in between, you had to go to an assigned study hall. And the study halls were awful. They were always in the older parts of the building that weren't used for regular classes. So they were like very old and decrepit and just very dungeony, honestly. They were really awful. And nobody wanted to be there. It felt a lot like detention, honestly. And so, like, a lot of kids would do everything they could to not have to go to study hall. And one of the things you could do instead of going to study hall, obviously without getting in trouble, like, you could just straight up ditch, but you would get in trouble. But one of the things you could do was spend your study hall in the library. And so we frequently did that, but they would only let a very limited number of kids into the library for each section of the study hall and lunch hours. And so we literally, like, I'm talking literally, y'all, had to haul and run all the way down to the first floor because our lockers were on the second floor. Our school had 3 floors. The school was massive. We had to run all the way down the stairs and run all the way to the library in order to be like far enough ahead in line to be able to get in the library. And there were some days where we didn't make it. And when we were in the library, we did a lot of shenanigans. And one of our favorite shenanigans to do was we would get on the library computers, and I don't know how many of y'all youngins remember, there was this website called Quizilla. So for those of y'all who are familiar with fan fiction, yes, we're at this level of dork, y'all. Fan fiction. I have written many a fan fiction in my day. So Quizilla was the original place online to write and share your fan fiction. This was before fanfiction.net was a thing. I am that old, y'all. And it was originally supposed to be a stupid, fun little website where people could make quizzes and share them. And people kind of like worked around that to be able to write fan fiction using this website. And so they actually made it a little bit of a choose your own adventure style writing thing by you like go through the quiz where they're like telling the fan fiction story and then you have to like click an option, and based on what you click depends on how the story progresses for you. And it was a huge thing. It was very, very popular when I was in school, and that's what me and my friend would do in the library. Is we spent a lot of time on the computers writing fan fiction on Quizilla. So that was a big thing that we did when we were running to get to the library, so we didn't have to be in basically like detention jail study hall instead. So that was a big way that we spent our time, and it was so fun, y'all. It was so stupid and dorky and fun. So there were also a limited number of computers, and it was pretty much first come, first serve. So we couldn't always play on the computers. And when that would happen, where we couldn't play on the computers and write stupid fan fiction, like, not saying all fan fiction is stupid, y'all. Like, I have read and written some absolutely fantastic fan fiction, but 15-year-old me was not writing anything fantastic, let me tell you. But when we couldn't do that, there were some books in our library that we would go over and read and have way too much fun reading. And eventually, the librarians actually removed the books because we were being so obnoxious. But there was like this section of the library, and it was funny because it was just like kind of like tucked away, and there weren't any windows. So it was also really, really dark over there too, but they were just all of these books about like ghosts and the paranormal and spooky and all that stuff. And we were just having fun being dorky 15-year-old spooky weirdos. We were some of the last of the generation of goth kids at our high school. So, fill in the blanks, basically. But yeah, that's what we would do on the days where we couldn't get the computers, is we'd go over there and we'd like reread those books for the 8 millionth time and be all like, we're so spooky. Oh my God, we're so hardcore and spooky with our spooky books. Oh, yeah, I think the librarians just absolutely hated us. They got real tired of our shenanigans. Once, like, I got older, I was able to get out of having to do that whole thing with having to, like, rush to the library in order to not have to go to study hall. Was I kind of earned the right to be able to spend my study hall in the art classroom, which was really nice. My art teacher let me hang out in the art classroom during my study hall time instead of going somewhere else so I could like work on my projects and stuff, which was really, really nice. And that was a rare privilege that she only extended to like a handful of students, because her biggest thing was like, you absolutely cannot distract the kids that were in class during that class period. Like, you had to basically, it was like you weren't even there. You were like invisible. You were not allowed to bother her or the class that she was teaching at the time. So it was a very big privilege if you got to be in the art room when it wasn't your art class. It was also limited space too. She could only extend it to a few people just because there were only so many desks in the classroom too to be seated at. And they weren't like desks, they were like straight up drafting table style tables, like stools and stuff. Like our art classroom was really, really nice, y'all. And I think that also really helped with developing my art, is that we had a real art program at my high school when I was there, and we had like all the supplies in the world, and it was really, really nice. I know a lot of schools have cut like a lot of the creative programs, which is just abhorrent, but I got really lucky, y'all. And I had a really, really good teacher too. She was fantastic. But yeah, I spent the majority of my time in high school in 3 different places: in the library, the art room, and the pool. Because as I talked about on my last live stream, like, I was a swimmer for the majority of my life, and I was also on the high school swim team. So I spent a lot of my time at the pool, especially when I was on varsity swim team. We sometimes had practice before school, which really, really sucked, because then you looked like a drowned rat for the rest of the day. And we also had mandatory, like, it was anywhere from 3 to 4 hours of swim practice after school. And then when we were on varsity, we also had to do dry land training. We only had 7 school periods instead of 8. Everybody else had 8, and we only had 7. So our last school period of the day, which was where our gym would have been, instead we had to go down to the weight room and do weightlifting for that portion of the day, and then we had to go jump in the pool. So it was very intense. Like, I had a very very intense 4 years of high school, y'all. Like, I was just super crazy busy. I always had so much going on. That's why, like, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you handle being so busy all the time? And the answer is that I honestly don't know how to not live my life being this busy. I have literally been this busy my entire life. Like, this is just normal for me. In fact, like, that's part of my therapy, is I'm actually having to learn to slow down and not be this crazy busy. And it's hard when this has been your life. Your whole life is super crazy busy. It is hard to not do that. So we still have a lot of details to complete on the flute, but it is already 9:30 and I am absolutely starving, y'all. So I think we are going to call it a night. Have a great night. If you're in a different time zone, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.